With an estimated 1/5 of Pakistan underwater, the race is on to rush humanitarian supplies to flood victims. We'll have the latest on U.S. military efforts to help. Sand to sea. Within weeks in Iraq, the dramatic shift from combat to advice and assist roles will be in full swing. Now, the complex task of moving equipment out of theater has kicked into high gear. Africa Endeavor. Close to 36 African nations recently came together to ensure their militaries can talk with each other during times of crisis. Plus, the Gulf oil spill will undoubtedly have lasting impacts on the environment. How one Air Force team is working to save an endangered species of sea turtles. Next on Around the Services.
Now, proudly serving those who serve. This is Around the Services.
Welcome, I'm Sergeant John Mann. During a recent visit to Iraq, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen, said he's confident the U.S. military will meet the President's August 31st deadline for troop levels in Iraq. A big part of that responsible drawdown involves getting equipment out. Scott Malone has more on this complex logistical process.
Bases in Iraq are being returned to the Iraqis by the dozens, and U.S. forces are withdrawing by the thousands. Getting the vehicles and equipment out is also an important and intricate part of the process that is headed up by 1st TSE's 1st Sustainment Brigade.
We don't really have a deadline, so to speak, to get the cargo out of country. The important thing is that we do it efficiently and we do it safely.
In some cases, the voyage can take up to 3 days, and with the potential for ambush or roadside bombs, the drivers take on tremendous risks.
The mission my soldiers are doing over here is what I often tell them is as we transition from Operation Iraqi Freedom to Operation New Dawn, it's something that their grandkids and great-grandkids will read about. It's an historical event, and they should be very proud of their contribution.
Once in Kuwait, the vehicles are taken to wash racks on Camp Arafjan, where they're cleaned and inspected thoroughly in order to gain clearance from U.S. Customs. Then they're taken to the port of Shuaiba on the Persian Gulf and loaded onto contracted vessels. These vessels resemble a large floating parking garage and can carry up to 9,000 tons of cargo on a single voyage.
We ensure it's properly documented, properly customs cleared, drive it down to the pier, prep it to be loaded onto a ship. The ship arrives, we load it onto a ship, and the ship sails away to its final destination.
With each successful departure, the mission in Iraq becomes a little closer to completion. Reporting for the 1st Theater Sustainment Command at the port of Shuaiba, Kuwait, I'm Scott Malone.
We're headed downrange in just a few minutes, but first let's go to the Pentagon Channel newsroom for the latest headlines.
I'm Staff Sergeant Allie Rose. In the news, Pentagon officials say more U.S. military support may be required to help victims of record flooding in Pakistan. Pentagon spokesman Brian Whitman said Tuesday defense officials are addressing the situation in Pakistan one day at a time, but it doesn't look like it is getting any better. The U.S. currently has 11 military helicopters and 3 cargo planes in Pakistan. They've rescued close to 4,000 flood victims and transported more than 500,000 pounds of food and relief supplies.
We're in the process of bringing supplies into these affected areas, a lot of food, water, a lot of grain, flour, that kind of thing, basic subsistence items. And so taking supplies into the region, and we're also evacuating these isolated people, as many as we can, out. And it's just a round-robin effect that we're doing right here.
Defense Secretary Robert Gates has ordered 19 helicopters to Pakistan. California National Guard troops will begin deploying to the U.S.-Mexico border Wednesday. Officials say the citizen soldiers are the first wave of about 225 California troops headed for the border once they complete their training. The Guard is sending 1,200 troops to states along the southwest border to provide temporary support for U.S. Customs and Border Patrol agents. Officials say the citizen soldiers and airmen will serve alongside federal agents for 1 year, working to prevent illegal immigration and drug trafficking. Although the Guard troops will be armed, their weapons will be only used in self-defense. The Department of Defense has released recruiting and retention numbers for July 2010. Among the active component, the Army, Navy, and Air Force all met or exceeded accession goals. The Marine Corps intentionally slowed its accessions to avoid exceeding its yearly recruiting goals. All 4 branches are at or above retention rates. On the recruiting side, 3 of the 6 reserve components exceeded their goals. The Army National Guard, Army Reserve, and the Marine Corps Reserve intentionally slowed its accessions. All losses are within acceptable rates. Hope for the Warriors has released its Spring 2011 scholarship application. Spouses and caregivers of wounded service members or spouses of fallen service members are eligible to apply. The purpose of the scholarship is to identify, recognize, and reward spouses and caregivers for their strength and dedication and to aid in their continued education at a college or trade school. 4 scholarships in the amount of $5,000 will be awarded, and 1 scholarship in the amount of $1,250. Previous winners may reapply for up to 4 years for a maximum of $20,000 awarded. And to apply for a scholarship, the applicant must meet all eligibility requirements on www.hopeforthewarriors.org, as well as submit all required items no later than Wednesday, October 13th. And for the latest military news, signature programming, and more, head to PentagonChannel.mil. I'm Staff Sergeant Allie Rose with your Pentagon Channel News Update.
Africa's largest communication exercise has now wrapped up. U.S. Africa Command helped bring together some 35 African nations and 2 European nations in Ghana. The relationships and real-world scenarios are part of a larger push to foster partnerships before crisis strikes. Master Sergeant Ken Baer reports.
Military participants from around Africa recently traveled to Ghana to take part in Africa Endeavor 2010. Sponsored by United States Africa Command, Africa Endeavor is the largest communications exercise in Africa.
The purpose of Africa Endeavor is an annual communications interoperability exercise that brings together 35 African partner nations to practice communications via data, voice, and also a new piece of it this year is information assurance.
This gives the participating nations and agencies a practiced ability to communicate with each other. For the African Union, one of 3 participating international agencies, that ability is vital.
The role of the African Union is to make sure that the African states or the different military forces on the continent are actually working together to achieve common standards.
Another important aspect of this exercise is the ability of its participants to learn about each other.
Earlier, we were sort of we did not have the opportunity to know each other. And by having this African Endeavor, it helps us to know each other.
Reporting for Africa Command, I'm Army Master Sergeant Ken Baer.
Coming up ahead on Around the Services, fishing fun. We go to the Azores where military children are learning an important skill. But first, making a difference. International security forces are dedicated to improving conditions in a volatile area of Afghanistan. We go on patrol in Wardak Province, next on Downrange. A grenade attack on Tuesday in eastern Afghanistan injured 4 International Security Assistance Force service members. Officials say ISAF and Afghan National Army forces were conducting patrols in Wardak Province when someone threw a grenade from a mosque. The service members did not return fire. Civilian deaths are reportedly on the rise in Afghanistan, many caused by insurgent attacks aimed at disrupting the peace process. Air Force Staff Sergeant Elena Ingram reports.
Insurgents continue their attacks on innocent civilians. On August 14th, insurgents killed 3 Afghan children during an attack on a forward operating base in Host Province. The insurgents fired their rockets knowing children were in the area. 2 of them died during the blast, and 1 was taken to forward operating base Salerno's Combat Support Hospital, where she later died of her wounds. The children's mother was also involved in the attack. U.S. Army Colonel Rafael Torres, the Combined Joint Operations Center director, said this just reiterates why terrorists must be stopped. Reporting from Bagram Airfield, I'm Air Force Staff Sergeant Alana Ingram.
Improving provincial security throughout Afghanistan takes time and dedication. Senior Airman Chris Piles takes us to Wardak Province, where international security forces are making an impact.
Afghanistan's Wardak Province has a lot to be proud of. The once Taliban-controlled region now boasts significantly improved security compared to last year. The governor of Wardak Province credits this change partly to the International Security Assistance Force in the area.
Because of the ISAF and also engaging with the public and having developmental efforts in the province, we were able to improve the security situation in Wardak Province.
For the last 2 years now, Wardak officials have met with coalition members, like Task Force ROC Commander Lieutenant Colonel Bill Butler, to tackle any security problems they've experienced and any they foresee in the future.
Each week we discuss security issues from the previous week and planning for the next week. Parliamentary elections are coming up. Everybody's focused on improving security for those elections so that the Afghan people can vote for their parliamentary representatives.
According to Colonel Butler, the meetings are a work in progress. Nevertheless, international security forces are staying focused on the big picture, a message that Governor Fadai fully understands.
I would like to also thank the families of those American soldiers who are coming here to save not Afghanistan a safe place, but also the world a safer place for everyone.
Senior Airman Chris Piles, Wardak Province, Afghanistan.
The Afghan National Army and U.S. forces are using the airwaves to counteract the Taliban's message. Overlooking Camp Moorhead sits this radio station. DJ Jana uses a radio in a box to play music, tell jokes, and get vital news and information out to the Afghan people. The Afghan station falls under the Afghan Information and Dissemination Operation, or AIDO, and their mission is clear-cut.
Train the Afghan commandos and Afghan special forces in information dissemination operations. Basically what that means is trying to get their message, what they're doing, and what actually counter the propaganda that the Taliban is putting out, get that out to the local nationals.
I want to get information about commando. I also get information about, and I like it radio.
Afghan National Army commandos are also operating as local DJs to get the message out to the people and build trust. That's a look at what's happening downrange. Download or watch these stories anytime on demand at PentagonChannel.mil. More than a year and a half ago, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, announced new measures authorizing the Navy to conduct sonar training. These rules came in the wake of revelations that sonar from ships may adversely affect some marine mammals. NATO researchers have been keeping tabs on whales and dolphins to better study possible damage done by sonar sent out by military marine vessels. NATO TV's David Heathfield reports.
Dolphins skim the waves in the vast Atlantic Ocean, an image of pristine nature. But in a busy sea where man and marine mammals share the same space, they can increasingly come into conflict. The ship NRV Alliance from the NATO Undersea Research Centre, known as NERC, is playing a role in ensuring NATO military ships can protect these special animals while still doing their job.
The main purpose of this cruise is to gather information on the marine mammals that live in the areas of the ocean that the NATO navies also occupy, in an attempt to try and find a way to determine how we can best mitigate the risk that might be associated with the navies putting any sound in the water that could have a negative impact on the marine animals. One of the best ways to do that is to go into the operating areas of the navies and try to determine what kinds of animals are there and which ones may or may not be at risk to any sound that the navies are putting into the water.
Setting off from their home port of La Spezia in Italy, the crew of scientific and acoustic specialists have sailed out into the Atlantic off the coast of Portugal. The research originated a decade ago when a group of beaked whales were beached on a Greek island, soon after NERC had been conducting sonar tests nearby. NERC started to look at whether there was a possible link between military sonar and the beachings, but concluded that we simply don't know enough about these animals, their habitat and behaviour.
So over the last 11 years, we have learned a lot in this field of marine mammal risk mitigation. In the beginning, we knew nothing about the species that was potentially impacted, the beaked whale. But now we actually understand their baseline characteristics, their habitat, but most importantly, where they're vocalizing, because this allows us to hear them when they are underwater as well as see them when they're on the surface.
Now, 10 years down the line, the programme is building on its accumulated knowledge and putting it to good use.
The data we collect on this cruise, both the visual, acoustic, and oceanographic data that's collected on this cruise, will go into the databases at NERC and be used by us in providing feedback to the NATO navies as they prepare to go out on exercises in determining what kinds of animals they may run into and how best to mitigate the risk to those animals during their exercise.
The NATO Undersea Research Centre comes under the command of Allied Command Transformation in America, the NATO agency which strives to modernise the way the alliance works. NERC has a long history of working with underwater acoustics as one of the foremost centres of anti-submarine warfare. The NATO Research Vessel Alliance is owned by NERC and perfectly suited to this kind of work.
She was designed as a quiet operating vessel. There's 9 noise levels from transit all the way through to stopped in the water doing data acquisition. That's working on batteries. When the ship was first designed, she actually met her criteria, and when she did her noise ranging, original noise ranging, she was thought to be the quietest operating vessel in the world.
It's this quiet running that makes it the ideal platform for gathering data on marine mammals. And in part 2, we'll see how the scientists on the Alliance go about their work at sea. This is David Heathfield reporting for NATO Channel.
Protecting environmental resources is part of the mission for many bases with sensitive ecological systems. At Eglin Air Force Base, careful monitoring and stewardship has helped endangered fish and wildlife thrive. But the oil spill this year has threatened to undo Eglin's environmental team's progress. Tech Sergeant Pete Blanding shows how Air Force and civilian workers are trying a new approach to save a threatened species.
A female sea turtle built a nest on this Gulf Coast beach 50 days ago. Today, a team of biologists from Eglin Air Force Base is digging the eggs up so they can move them to the Atlantic coast. This type of sea turtle is a threatened species known as the loggerhead. A team of federal and state agencies has determined that moving the eggs is the best way to protect the young hatchlings from the oil spill.
This oil spill was definitely a bad thing, and I mean, it's a bad thing for people, it's a bad thing for animals, but I feel like possibly we're actually doing some good out here.
The team carefully removes the eggs and places them into sand-filled styrofoam coolers. These containers are their temporary home for their nearly 500-mile journey. Moving the eggs is a risky process.
The danger at this point is that the embryos are actually growing inside of the egg and they're attached to the shell wall. And so when we move them, we don't want to detach that embryo from the shell wall because that will obviously kill them.
The team recovered 117 eggs from the nest. They should hatch on the East Coast within the next few weeks. Air Force Sergeant Pete Blanding, Eglin Air Force Base, Florida.
Coming up next on Around the Services, the sea has been a source of food and commerce for thousands of years. Now, another generation of kids are learning the age-old art of fishing. Finally today, the Azores is a small island chain in the Atlantic Ocean. Fishing is a mainstay for the locals, and it's not just for pleasure. At Lodges Field, Staff Sergeant Curtis Van Nuss follows a group of kids as they spend the week learning how to fish.
Worms, fishing poles, and water.
everything you need for a day of fishing. Kids at Lodges Field learned about fish and how to catch them.
Fishing Camp is a program that's designed to give the kids an opportunity to learn about the fish market, fishing, different species of fish, and best of all, to fish.
I catch the fish!
Kids, like Austin Henry, said the fishing camp was enjoyable from start to finish.
It's pretty fun, and so far I've caught 6 fish. I remember Wednesday, I only caught 2, but here we're just catching them left and right.
The kids used different kinds of bait to help them catch the fish.
We're using worms, or I think some people might be using the fish we caught.
Oh my gosh, I had that
But
big fish.
yeah, I think the worms, for me, they're working really, really well.
While Austin caught a lot of fish, other kids caught bigger ones.
I felt very jealous, but it was pretty impressive. I mean, I thought we were just going to be catching these little ones because that's all I could see, but when I saw that, I wanted to catch one of those.
The program helped them learn a lot about fishing.
I really enjoyed it. It was very interesting to see the commercial fishing and the traditional fishing. I liked that. In the end, I was really glad that I did go. It was a fun experience.
And there's 100 of fish in there. Yeah, because I caught 6 of them.
Mr. Carlington said he hopes the kids understand that a lot of hard work goes into catching a fish. The fishing camp showed kids that no matter the age, fishing can be an enjoyable experience. I'm Staff Sergeant Curtis Van Nuss, Lodges Field, Azores.
And continuing this theme of marine mammals, we leave you with a look at the Coast Guard airlifting a marooned whale stuck on Hawaiian Beach. I'm Sergeant John Mann. For everyone here at the Pentagon Channel, thanks for watching.